And when you breathe out, you don't exhale everything in your lungs would collapse. About half of the air stays in your lungs even when you exhale. So the point I'm trying to make is that you can't draw a line and say the air ends here and I begin there. There is no line. It's in us, it's stuck to us, and it's circulating through our bodies. We are air. There's no environment out there and we are here. We've got to regulate our interaction with it. We are air. And the air that I breathe out, of course, very quickly through convection mixes in this room, and every one of you is breathing the air that came out of my lungs. When I say this in front of kids, I often see them going, oh, yeah. They think they have a little bubble of air that belongs to them. We are air, and if I am air and you are air, I am you. We are embedded in a matrix of air, not only with all human beings on earth, but with the trees and the birds and the worms and the snakes that are all a part of that thin matrix that spans the earth. The astronomer Harlow Shapley once did a wonderful thought exercise. He said, what happens to one breath of air? Well, what is the air? 98% of the air is oxygen and nitrogen. Breathe it in, oxygen and nitrogen go into our bodies. We need air all the time for the oxygen, so when you breathe out, a lot of the oxygen never comes back out. 80% of the air is nitrogen. You breathe it in, some of it reacts biochemically and doesn't come back out. But 1% of the air is an element called argon. Argon belongs to a class of elements called the noble gases, the inert gases. They are chemically inert. They don't react with anything. So you breathe it in, goes into your body, breathe it out, comes right back out. So argon is a good, what scientists call, marker for a breath of air. It's 1% of the air. How many atoms of argon in one breath of air? Shapley calculates 3 followed by 18 zeros. That's 3 billion atoms of argon in one breath of air. Believe me, that's a lot of argon. So let's follow one breath of air that comes out of Christine's lungs. Let's say that she takes one breath, out come 3 billion argon atoms, and within minutes, every one of us is breathing gazillions of argon atoms from that one original breath. But of course, a door is open, and eventually that breath will just be pushed out of this room, across Hobart, across Australia. And according to Shapley, 1 year later, no matter where you are in the world, because air is a single system, every breath you take will have about 15 argon atoms from that one original breath that Christine took a year before. So on that basis, Shapley calculates that every breath you take has millions of argon atoms that were once in the bodies of Joan of Arc and Jesus Christ. That every breath you take has millions of argon atoms that were in the bodies of dinosaurs 65 million years ago. That every breath you take will suffuse life forms as far as we can see into the future. So air, you see, is this wonderful substance that gives us life, that links us to all other life forms on Earth, that links us to the past and into the future indelibly. So we boast of our intelligence. What intelligent creature, knowing that air should be sacred, should then proceed to use air as a dump for the most toxic chemicals we've ever made, and think somehow that by doing that, it won't affect us. We are water. Every one of us is at least 60% water by weight. We're just basically a big blob of water with enough organic thickener added so we don't dribble away on the floor. And you know, our bodies leak water. It comes into your skin and your eyes and your mouth and your crotch, and you lose water all the time. And you think, when I drink this water, do you think this is Hobart water? I mean, we know the hydrologic cycle that allows water to go around the world. Water here comes from all of the oceans of the world, off the canopies of every forest on the planet. Water is another glue like air that links us to all the rest of life. We say we are intelligent. What intelligent creature, knowing that we are water, would then proceed to use water as a toxic dump? We are earth, because every bit of the food that we eat to build our bodies was once alive. And the vast bulk of it was plant material that grows in the soil. We are the earth through the food that nourishes us, and yet we use the soil to dump our toxic chemicals. And we are fire because, as I said earlier, every bit of the energy in our bodies that we need to move, grow, and reproduce, every bit of that is sunlight captured by plants, converted into chemical energy. We then eat the plants or eat the animals that eat the plants, and we store that energy in ourselves. And when we need that energy, we burn these molecules to liberate the energy of the sun in our bodies. We are the earth, created by the 4 sacred elements. These then are our most fundamental needs, and yet we use them so thoughtlessly, and we use them as simply dumping grounds for our wastes and toxic chemicals. So where does that take us then? Economics and ecology come from the same root word. Ecos is the Greek word for household or domain. Ecology is the study of home. Economics is the management of home. What ecologists try to do is to determine what are the rules and the principles, what are the conditions that enable a species to survive and flourish. Now, I would have thought any group in society would think that's the most important thing that we can know. And before carrying out any new program, would say, oh, wait a minute, before we do this, what were those ecological principles and conditions? Because we don't want to do anything that will violate the very things that keep us alive. But we don't do that. We have now elevated economics above ecology. So let's put the eco back into economics. You see, my prime minister, now a few years ago, we had the 3 amigos. That was George Bush, John Howard, and Stephen Harper. 2 of those amigos are gone, but good old Stephen Harper, the Prime Minister of Canada, is carrying on in the George Bush tradition. And he says, we can't possibly deal with climate change, it'll destroy our economy. So our Prime Minister has elevated the economy above the atmosphere that keeps us alive. We had the Minister of the province of Alberta, which is comparable to Texas in the United States. It's our energy province. The Environment Minister a few years ago said, these damned environmentalists better understand. He's the Environment Minister, right? These damned environmentalists better understand. We can't afford to do the things they want us to do if we don't have a healthy, growing economy. So even the Minister of the Environment, whose job is to protect the environment, thinks the economy is the source of everything that matters, and it comes before everything else. This is insanity. But I've been told over and over again by business people and politicians, you have to be realistic. The economy is the bottom line. I did a 10-part radio series on Canadian broadcasting this summer called The Bottom Line. Because as a scientist, I see a radically different bottom line from the one that most politicians and business people, thank God for the Greens, see. We live in a world, you see, that is constrained by some forces of nature that we can't do anything about. In physics, there's the first and second law of thermodynamics. So we know that you can't build a perpetual motion machine. We know that there's gravity. You can't have an anti-gravity machine on Earth. We know that you can't build a rocket that will travel faster than the speed of light. Those are forces of nature. We understand it, and we live with those. In chemistry, there are all kinds of principles and rules that regulate what kinds of chemical reactions will take place. There are diffusion constants, reaction rates that constrain what kinds of chemicals and compounds can be created, and we live with that. In biology, we know that our biological nature is determined on the basis of our dependence on air, water, soil, and sunlight. Those are absolutely critical, and we can't do anything about changing that in any way. Other things, capitalism, free enterprise, the economy, currency, markets, these are not forces of nature, for heaven's sakes. We invented them. We can't change the forces of nature, but we can sure as hell change any of our own inventions. And yet, whenever you talk to one of these neoconservative folks, you know, boy, they might seem perfectly normal until you say market, and they go, oh, market, yes. Oh, the market, free the market, leave the market alone, and everything will... Wait a minute now. We invented that damn thing. It's not something we should create as sacrosanct. And yet we act as if the economy or the market or currency... I mean, look at I arrive in Australia and oh my God, is everybody happy? The Australian dollar's on a parity with the American dollar. Hallelujah! It's amazing to me. You know, these are banner headlines, right? And yet you hear a report that 25% of all plant species may be extinct within the next 2 decades. It's buried way back on page 18 of the newspapers. What? This is really bizarre for me. In 2008, we had an incredible opportunity. We had an economic meltdown that provided us with a chance to sit back and say, wait a minute now, we can't just keep going with a dot-com boom and bust, housing boom and bust. We've got to design a different system. That was our opportunity. That was our moment. Instead, what happened? Mr. Bush and then Mr. Obama began to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into the damn banks that created the crisis, poured hundreds of millions into the auto sector without any strings attached, and all they asked was, please get back up running and growing again. Please, please, please. Wasn't it Mr. Einstein who said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result? We had a chance to get things right, and instead, we just wanted to get back going with that old defective thing. We also compound the problem of this human-created economics being elevated up there by elevating other human constructs above the real world. We draw lines around our property, around our cities, our states, our countries, and boy, do we take those boundaries seriously. We will go to war, we will kill and die to protect those boundaries. But do you think air cares about our boundaries? Do you think water cares about our boundaries? We get in North America dust and seeds that are blown from Africa over to North America. They don't stop at the border and say, uh-oh, I got to stay within Africa. And think of all the migrating plants, the migrating birds, insects, mammals, and fish. They don't stop or pay any attention to human boundaries. And that's why, look at what happened in Copenhagen in December last year. 192 countries trying to negotiate something that doesn't care about human boundaries, trying to negotiate through 192 different lenses, and then compounding the problem by each country saying, well, we've got some economic priorities here that have to be fit into whatever the agreement is that we get out of it. These kinds of conferences are doomed to fail. They are doomed to fail because we have elevated our own constructs above the real world, which is the world determined by forces of nature, not human inventions.